She said it like it was a warning and a promise at the same time. Careful, I get attached to hard-working guys fast. I froze for half a second, the mower handle warm under my palms, my throat suddenly dry. Her eyes held mine with this calm, playful look, like she already knew I was the kind of guy who would take that sentence seriously. I tried to laugh it off, because that's what you do when a woman like Rachel Evans says something like that to a guy like me. Then I'll try not to work too hard, I said. Rachel's smile pulled a little wider, like she liked my answer more than she expected. Then she stepped back toward the porch, as if she had not just tossed a spark into my day and walked away. My name's Alex Morgan. I'm 24, born and raised just outside Columbus, Ohio, in a small town where everyone knows your family and your business. Most of my friends went off to college, ended up in offices, or chased big city dreams. I never wanted a desk. I wanted dirt under my nails and something to show for the hours I put in. So I started my own little business with savings from odd jobs and a used Ford van that had rust on the wheel wells and a rattle in the engine I learned to ignore. I called it Green Line Yard Services because I liked the idea of drawing a clean line through messy yards and making them look alive again. The work was simple but hard. I cut grass, trimmed hedges, hauled mulch, planted shrubs, and took whatever jobs I could get. My first clients were neighbors and retirees who could not push a mower anymore. They paid in small bills and sometimes fed me like I was their grandson. I slept in a tiny apartment above my parents' garage and told myself it was temporary, just until the business caught a real break. Then a heat wave hit in early summer, the kind that makes the road shimmer and turns every job into a test. I was out by my van checking mower blades when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered with grease still on my hands. A woman's voice came through, calm and steady, like she knew exactly what she wanted. "Hello, Alex. This is Rachel Evans. My neighbor gave me your number. My yard's a mess. Overgrown grass and some rodent issues. Are you available?" The way she said my name made my spine straighten, like I was suddenly trying to stand taller through the phone. "Yes, ma'am," I said. "I can be there tomorrow morning." She texted the address right after. It was in the nicer part of town, the one with bigger lots and old houses that looked expensive without trying. I stared at the screen, feeling nerves I did not usually feel. My first client from that side of town. People with money sometimes look at a guy like me and only see a worker. Nothing more. That night I prepped like I had a job interview. Sharpened blades, cleaned the van, tossed my cleanest polo on the bed so I would not forget it in the morning. I even stuck a fresh green line sticker on the van door, like it would help me belong. I pulled up early the next day, the sun just cresting the trees. The house was a white Victorian, with a wide porch and fruit trees lining the driveway like they had been planted on purpose for a picture. The yard should have felt fancy, but what caught my attention was not the porch swing or the fresh paint. It was the little stand by the curb. It looked like a kid's lemonade stand, but sturdier, built from pine boards with shelves stacked full of produce. Tomatoes, squash, cucumbers, potatoes, apples, bundles of herbs. A chalkboard sign leaned against it. "Honor stand. Pay what you can or nothing at all. If you're in need, just take it, no questions." A clear glass jar sat beside the sign with a few bills and coins inside. I stood there staring, trying to make sense of it in a neighborhood like this. An elderly couple pulled up in a beat-up sedan. The woman chose a couple tomatoes, dropped coins in the jar, and smiled like she had just been given a gift. The man tucked a small note into the jar too, like a thank you. I felt this warmth hit me, the kind you do not expect when you are just there to mow a lawn. Then the front door opened, and Rachel Evans stepped out. She was in her early 40s, tall and poised, brown hair tied back loosely, eyes sharp but kind. She wore jeans and a faded t-shirt like she did not care what anyone thought, and somehow that made her look even more confident. She walked across the lawn with a smile that felt easy but not careless. "You must be Alex," she said, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, her hand was warm. I noticed because my brain likes to notice small things when I am nervous. "Yeah," I said. "That's me. Nice to meet you, Ms. Evans." "Call me Rachel," she replied, like she was already done with distance. "Come on back. Let's see what we're dealing with." She led me around the side of the house, and the backyard made me stop again. It was a garden, but not like the little neat beds people plant for decoration. This was a real working space. Apple trees heavy with fruit. Rows of vegetables, pear and plum bushes. Soil that looked loved. And still, she was right. The grass was knee-high in spots. Weeds had pushed into the beds. Small holes dotted the soil near the roots, signs of rodents digging. "I grow all this for folks around here," Rachel said as we walked. "I sell it cheap or give it away. Seniors, families, anyone who needs it. The honor stand works most days." I looked at her. "You just trust people like that?" Rachel shrugged like it was the simplest thing in the world. "If someone takes without paying, they probably need it more than I need the cash." That statement hit me harder than it should have. Maybe because I knew what it felt like to count dollars at night and wonder if you made the wrong choice with your life. "And the rodents?" I asked, forcing my mind back to the job. "They're ruining roots," she said, pointing to the holes. "I need the grass cut, beds cleaned, and traps set. I can handle the stand and the planting. I just need help with the heavy work." "I can handle it," I said quickly. "I'll start with mowing and work my way in." Rachel watched me like she was deciding something about me that had nothing to do with grass. Then she stepped closer, patted my shoulder lightly, and said those words. "Treat it like your own yard," she told me. Careful though, I get attached to hard-working guys fast. There it was again, that spark. I swallowed, turned toward my mower, and tried to act normal. But my heart was not acting normal. It was beating like I had just stepped onto a ledge. I fired up the mower, and the sound filled the yard. The scent of cut grass rose into the hot air, mixing with sweet fruit from the trees. As I worked, people kept stopping by the stand out front. Kids on bikes, a man with a cane, a mom with a stroller. Rachel waved at each one like she had been waiting for them, not like they were interrupting her day. Every time I caught a glimpse of her, I felt something shift in my chest. By the time the sun dipped low and I loaded my tools back into the van, my shirt was stuck to my back and my arms burned in that satisfying way. Rachel walked me to the driveway, wiping her hands on a rag. "You did good today," she said. "Just doing the job," I replied, but my voice came out softer than I intended. Rachel's gaze held mine a second longer than it needed to. "Hard-working guys always say that," she said, like it was a secret she had learned the hard way. I climbed into my van, started the engine, and glanced back at the porch light flicking on behind her, at the honor stand glowing under the streetlight, at Rachel standing there like she belonged to the whole neighborhood. And I realized I did not want to leave. Not really. Because for the first time in a long time, I was not thinking about money or survival or proving myself. I was thinking about what it would feel like if she got attached. And what it would cost me if I did too. I told myself I was only excited because Rachel's place was my best-paying client. That's what I said in my head as I drove back the next morning, with a fresh roll of wire mesh and a new set of traps. Good clients are rare when you're a small business owner. You hold on to them, but the truth showed up the moment I turned onto Willow Ridge Road and saw her porch, her fruit trees, and that honor stand already drawing people in like a quiet magnet. Rachel was out there early, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back, arranging tomatoes in neat rows like she was setting up something sacred. When she spotted my van, she waved like she was glad I came, not like she was just waiting on the hired help. "You're early," she called. "Habit," I said, hopping out. She nodded toward the porch. "Coffee's on. I'm not letting you work on an empty stomach." I tried to refuse because I'm the type of guy who thinks accepting things means you owe something, but she gave me that look. The one that said she was not asking. So I followed her up the steps, and the smell of coffee hit me like comfort. Her kitchen was simple but warm. A worn wooden table. A bowl of apples. A stack of seed packets by the window. The kind of place that felt lived in, not staged. Maximal in the way a person's life gets when they stop trying to impress anyone. Rachel poured coffee into a chipped mug and slid it to me. "How's the van holding up?" "Still running," I said. "Barely." She smiled. "That's how most good things start." We went over the plan for the day, but it quickly turned into her teaching me things, without making it feel like a lesson. She showed me where the rodents like to dig and how to tell fresh holes from old ones. She pointed out which leaves meant pests and which meant a plant was just thirsty. I listened like my life depended on it, because in her yard, it kind of did. If I messed up here, I wasn't just messing up a client's flower bed. I was messing up food. I worked through the morning, mowing, pulling weeds, setting traps near the fence line. The sun climbed higher, and sweat soaked through my shirt. Every so often, someone would stop at the stand, and Rachel would greet them by name. A mom came up with a toddler in a stroller, the kid pointing at the apples like they were toys. Rachel slipped an extra bag of cucumbers into the woman's arms with a quiet smile. The woman's eyes went glossy, like she wanted to cry but didn't. A pair of construction workers grabbed potatoes and left a couple dollars in the jar. Rachel thanked them like they were doing her a favor. Then a kid on a bike rolled up, maybe 10 years old, and stared at the squash for a long time before picking one. He didn't drop money in the jar, he dropped a folded piece of paper. I glanced at Rachel as he pedaled away. He didn't pay. Rachel didn't even flinch. She opened the jar, unfolded the paper, and her face softened. It was a drawing. A stick figure garden with a big sun overhead and a little stand next to it. Under it, in messy handwriting, it said, "Thank you." Rachel put it back in the jar like it was worth more than cash. Something tightened in my chest. Back home, jobs were simple. Cut the lawn, get paid, move on. Here, everything had weight. Every tomato mattered. Every person who stopped by mattered. It made my work feel different, like it meant something beyond my bank account. Around noon, an older woman with silver hair shuffled up to the stand using a cane. Rachel stepped off the porch to greet her right away. "Morning, Mrs. Thompson," she said. Mrs. Thompson smiled and picked 2 carrots, an apple, and a handful of greens with slow care. Then she dropped 1 dime into the jar as if it was $100. She noticed me nearby and nodded. "You're the young man fixing up the yard." "Yes, ma'am," I said. She pointed her cane at me lightly. "Don't let the rats win. Rachel's heart is too big for this town sometimes." Rachel laughed softly. "Mary, stop!" But I could tell it meant something to her. After the afternoon heat hit, I moved to the back beds, spreading mulch and pulling weeds that were choking the zucchini. Rachel came out every so often with cold water, checking on me, offering help, then stepping back like she didn't want to distract me. But she did distract me. Not on purpose. Just by existing. Because there was something about the way she moved around that yard. She wasn't trying to be cute or flirty. She was just steady, capable, kind. And it made me want to be the same. Later, when I finished a row and wiped my forehead with my sleeve, Rachel stood beside me and studied the clean lines I'd made in the bed. "You've got a good eye," she said. "Most guys your age don't notice details. They rush." "I can't rush here," I told her. "Not with what you're doing." Quote. Her gaze shifted to me, and for a second I felt like she wasn't looking at my work anymore. She was looking at me. That evening, after I loaded the last of my tools into the van, Rachel surprised me by asking, "You got a minute?" I nodded, and she motioned toward the porch swing. We sat side by side, the air finally cooling, the sky turning soft gold. The stand out front still had a few late visitors. Someone dropped coins in the jar. Someone left a note. The world kept moving, but slower now. Rachel handed me a glass of iced tea with lemon. "You ever regret starting your business?" The question hit close because I asked myself that almost every night. "Sometimes," I admitted. "I lie in bed and wonder if I should have done something safer. Office job, truck driving, anything steady." Rachel didn't judge. She just nodded like she understood. "I thought my life was over at 35, she said quietly. I looked at her. She stared out at her yard like she could see the past between the rows of plants. "My ex left." took half the savings, left me with this house, and a lot of quiet. No kids, no family nearby. I spent months waking up and thinking, what's the point? My chest tightened again. I didn't know what to say, so I stayed quiet and let her talk. This garden saved me, she continued, planting something, watching it grow, giving it away. It reminded me I was still here, still capable of good. I swallowed. That's a hell of a way to come back. Rachel's mouth curved. I didn't come back alone. People helped. They just didn't always know they were helping. Her eyes found mine, and something in the air shifted. It wasn't heavy. It was just honest. Then she looked away and added, almost like she was trying to keep it light again. So yeah, careful. I get attached to hard-working guys fast. My heart thumped hard enough that I felt it in my ears. I tried to play it cool, but my voice came out rough. Is that a warning? Rachel's smile was small but real. It's information, she said. Do what you want with it. I didn't know what to do with it. Not yet. On the drive home, the sunset streaked orange across the sky, and the van rattled, like always. But my head was full of Rachel's voice in her yard, and that jar with the drawing inside. I tried to remind myself she was older, she was in a different stage of life, and she was my client. Lines matter, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that the line was already moving. And the scariest part was that I didn't hate it. I just didn't know what would happen if I stepped over it. The morning everything went wrong, I woke up before my alarm like my body already knew. The air felt heavy, humid, the kind of Ohio morning that promises trouble by noon. I loaded the van with extra traps, a bag of mulch, and my usual tools. I told myself it was just another workday. But when I turned onto Rachel's street, my stomach tightened. Something looked off even from the curb. The honor stand was crooked, like someone had kicked it. The chalkboard sign was smeared. One shelf sat at a slant, and the jar that usually sparkled clean looked dusty, like it had been grabbed. I parked fast and got out, my boots hitting gravel hard. Then I saw the garden. Tomato plants yanked out of the ground like someone had ripped them up in anger. Cucumber vines trampled into mud. A row of carrots dug up and tossed aside. Traps smashed and scattered. And there was a gap in the fence big enough for a person to climb through, the wire pulled back like it had been torn open with tools. I stood there for a second, trying to make sense of it, like my eyes were lying. Then I saw the chalkboard. In jagged letters, someone had written, "Don't bring the trash into this neighborhood." My chest went hot. My hands curled into fists without me meaning to. Rachel was already out back, kneeling in the dirt. She held a snapped tomato stem like it was something fragile. Her face was pale, eyes red around the edges, but she wasn't crying. She looked like she was forcing herself not to fall apart. When she heard me, she turned. For a second, her expression softened, like she was relieved I was there. Then she shook her head, like she didn't want me to see her like this. "Alex," she said quietly, "I didn't call you. You shouldn't have to see this." Quote, I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "What happened?" Rachel let out a slow breath. "Someone came last night. Vandals. Or neighbors who decided they're tired of the stand." I looked around again, anger rising. "We're calling the cops." Rachel shook her head fast. "No cameras. No proof. And in a town like this, it turns into a war. I don't want that." I stared at her. "Someone did this to you." Her jaw tightened. "They did it to the garden." I walked to the fence gap and stared at the torn wire. The sunlight hit the ripped metal, and I imagined hands doing this, not by accident, but on purpose. My throat felt tight. Rachel's voice softened. "A woman across the street warned me last week. She said the stand brings in the wrong people. Said it lowers property value. I told her she could keep her value. I didn't think she'd go this far." I turned back to Rachel. "They can't scare you out of doing something good." Rachel looked at the ruined beds, and I saw the defeat trying to creep into her face. Then she swallowed and straightened her shoulders like she was putting on armor. "I don't want to stop," she said, "but I'm tired, Alex. I'm so tired." Something in me shifted. A line moved again. I crouched beside her and picked up a fallen tomato plant. The roots were still damp. Not dead yet. "We're not stopping," I said. "We're fixing it. All of it." Rachel's eyes flicked up to mine. "You don't have to." "I know," I said, "but I want to." For the first time that morning, her face changed, not into a smile, not fully, just into something softer, like she was holding on to my words. We got to work. I drove straight to the hardware store, bought wire mesh, fence posts, bolts, and cement mix. I grabbed replacement plants from the garden center, even though it cost more than I wanted to spend. I didn't care. I just wanted to see the place healed. When I returned, Rachel was already clearing debris. She moved with quiet focus, picking up smashed traps, gathering broken stems, pulling weeds back from the damaged beds like she was trying to control something when her world had been shaken. We patched the fence first. I dug holes, set posts, mixed cement with my arms burning. Rachel held the mesh tight while I fastened it. Sweat poured down my back, and my shirt stuck to my skin, but I barely noticed. By noon, 2 kids from down the street wandered over, staring at the mess with wide eyes. "Miss Rachel," one of them said, "can we help?" Rachel blinked like she hadn't expected anyone to show up, then she handed them gloves. "Yes," she said. "Pick up any vines you see and stack them over there." The kids got to work like it was a mission. A young mom came next, pushing a stroller. She carried a paper bag. "I heard," she said, looking angry. "I brought sandwiches." Rachel's face softened. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," the mom replied. Then Mrs. Thompson arrived, slow but stubborn, her walker bumping along the path. She held a small bag like it was treasure. "Bean seeds," she said firmly. "They grow fast. Don't you dare quit." Rachel's hands covered her mouth for a second, and I saw her eyes fill. She hugged Mrs. Thompson gently, careful of the walker. More people came after that. A retiree with a shovel, a teen with a rake, a man in a work shirt who brought topsoil without saying much. It wasn't a crowd, but it felt like one. Like Rachel had planted more than vegetables. She had planted loyalty. By late afternoon, the yard looked bruised but breathing again. Fresh soil pressed around new seedlings. The fence stood stronger. The honor stand was straight, but the chalkboard still had that ugly message on it. Rachel stared at it for a long time. I grabbed a wet rag and scrubbed until the letters faded, my hands shaking with anger. Then I handed Rachel a piece of chalk. She looked at me. What should I write? I thought about the people who had showed up, the kids drawing, the mom's sandwiches, Mrs. Thompson's seeds. Rachel lifted the chalk and wrote slowly, "Take what you need, pay what you can. Kindness grows here." When she stepped back, her eyes were glossy. We sat on the porch steps as the sun dropped low. The helpers had left, waving goodbye like this was their garden too. The air smelled like fresh earth and cut grass. It should have felt peaceful, but I could tell Rachel was still shaken. She held a glass of water in both hands like she needed something solid. "After my divorce," she said softly, "I felt like this, like someone ripped up everything I built and left me staring at dirt." I turned toward her. "You're not alone now." Rachel swallowed. "You show up every day," she said. "You work like this matters to you. It makes me feel safe in a way I forgot was possible." My heart thumped hard. She looked at me then. Really looked. "I don't want to get you pulled into my mess." "It's not your mess," I said. "It's someone else's cruelty, and I'm already in it." Rachel's hand moved, slow, and rested on my forearm. Just a light touch, but it sent heat straight through me. "Alex," she whispered, "I meant what I said. I get attached fast." I held her gaze. "So do I said before I could stop myself. Rachel's breath caught. Her fingers tightened on my arm, and for a second, the whole world narrowed to the porch steps, her eyes, and the quiet between us. Then, a sharp sound cut through it. A car door slammed across the street. I looked up. A woman stood near the curb by her mailbox, staring straight at us, her posture stiff, her face hard, like she had been watching for a while. Rachel's hand slipped off my arm. My stomach dropped. The woman's voice carried across the quiet street. "So it's true," she called out. "You're not just running a stand. You're running a circus." Rachel stood slowly, shoulders squared, but I could see the fear behind her calm. I stood too, stepping closer to Rachel without thinking, like my body knew where it belonged. The woman took a step toward the curb, eyes locked on Rachel. "This isn't over," she said. And in that moment I realized the vandalism wasn't the worst part. It was just the beginning. The woman across the street didn't yell again. She didn't need to. The way she looked at Rachel was enough, like she was trying to cut her down without touching her. Then she turned and walked back up her driveway, slow and sure, like she wanted us to know she wasn't scared of either of us. The silence she left behind felt heavier than the humidity. Rachel stood beside me, arms crossed tight over her chest. Her chin was up, but her eyes were glassy. She looked like she was holding her breath, waiting for something else to happen. I wanted to say something smart, something that would fix it, but I knew there were no words that could undo what that woman had already started. So I did the only thing I could do. I shifted closer to Rachel, just enough that my shoulder touched hers. Not a hug, not a big gesture, just a quiet signal that she wasn't standing alone. Rachel let out a slow breath. "That's Diane Keller," she said. "She's been trying to push me out for months." "She did the vandalism?" I asked. Rachel shook her head. "I don't know, but she's the loudest about it, and she has friends." That last part landed like a warning. We stood there, looking at the yard we'd rebuilt, the fresh soil, the repaired fence, the chalkboard message shining under the porch light. It was beautiful again, but now it felt exposed. Rachel's voice turned small. "Sometimes I forget how mean people can be when they think they own a neighborhood." Quote. I looked at her profile. The tight jaw, the way she kept swallowing like she was forcing herself not to cry. "You don't have to take this alone," I said. Rachel's eyes slid to me. "You keep saying that." "Because I mean it," I replied. She stared for a second, then looked away toward the street like she didn't trust her own feelings. "Alex, you're young. You have your whole life. Green Line is finally getting traction. You don't need to be tangled up in my fight." I felt that heat rise in my chest again. Not anger this time, something deeper. "This isn't just your fight," I said. "It's wrong, and you're doing something good that matters to me." Rachel's lips parted like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Instead, she stepped up onto the porch, opened the front door, and paused. "Come inside," she said quietly. "Please." The word please from Rachel hit different. It wasn't bossy. It wasn't polite. It sounded like she needed me. I followed her in. Inside, the house was dim and calm. Soft lamplight, the faint smell of coffee from earlier. A bowl of apples on the counter. It should have felt normal, but everything felt charged, like the air itself was waiting. Rachel set 2 glasses on the table and poured water. Her hands trembled just a little. She tried to hide it by wiping them on a towel. I didn't call it out. I just stepped closer. "Sit," she said, nodding toward the kitchen table. I sat, and she stood across from me for a moment, like she didn't know what to do with her own body. Then she lowered herself into the chair opposite me and finally let the mask slip. "I hate this," she whispered. "I hate feeling like I have to defend kindness." My throat tightened. "You shouldn't have to." Rachel looked down at her hands. "After my divorce, I swore I'd never depend on anyone again. Not emotionally, not financially. I built this garden to prove I could stand on my own. And now I feel like they're trying to rip it away." I leaned forward, my elbows on the table. "They're not taking it." Rachel shook her head like she wanted to believe me but couldn't. "What if they come back? What if it gets worse? What if they start spreading rumors about you? About us?" The way she said "us" made my stomach flip. I held her gaze. "Let them talk." Rachel gave a broken little laugh. "You say that now, but you haven't lived in this kind of quiet cruelty. People smile to your face and cut you down behind your back." "I grew up here," I reminded her. "I know exactly how it is." Rachel's eyes softened, and for a second she looked tired, not just from today, but from years. "Alex," she said, voice low, "I meant it when I said I get attached fast." I swallowed. "I know." Rachel's gaze dropped to my hands, then back to my face. "And I'm attached. That's the problem." My heart thudded hard. How is that a problem? Quote, because you're not a safe choice, she admitted. You're young. You're determined. You're the kind of man who would stay when he shouldn't. And I'm the kind of woman who would let you. The honesty in her words made my whole chest ache. I stood up slowly and walked around the table. I stopped beside her chair, close enough to feel her warmth. Rachel's breath caught. I reached down, not rushing, and brushed my fingers against her cheek. Her skin was warm and her eyes closed for a second, like she'd been holding herself together too long. You deserve someone who stays, I said. Rachel opened her eyes and they were wet. I don't want to ruin your life. You're not, I said. You're making it feel real. For a moment, neither of us moved. The house was quiet except for our breathing. Then Rachel stood too, and suddenly we were close. So close I could see the tiny freckles on her nose and the tiredness behind her strength. She whispered, Alex, if we do this, it won't be casual. I don't want casual, I replied. Her lips parted like she was deciding something. Then she stepped forward and kissed me. It wasn't wild or messy. It was slow, careful, like she was testing whether she was allowed to want this. But the second I kissed her back, I felt her melt a little, like she had been waiting for permission to stop fighting alone. When we pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too, I admitted, but I'm here. Rachel's hands gripped my shirt gently. Then don't leave tonight. The words hit me like a wave, not because of what they meant physically, but because of what they meant emotionally. She wasn't asking for a night. She was asking for someone to stay. I looked into her eyes and made the choice my heart had been making for weeks. Then I'll stay tonight, I said. Rachel let out a shaky breath that sounded like relief. She pulled me into her arms, holding tight, and I held her back, feeling the weight of her fear and her hope pressed against me. We didn't rush anything after that. We moved to the couch, sat close, her head on my shoulder, my arm around her. The porch light cast a warm glow through the window, and outside the garden lay quiet, sleeping in the dark. Rachel spoke softly, telling me things she'd never said out loud. How lonely the house had been after the divorce. How she'd built the honor stand because she wanted to believe people were mostly good. How every time someone left a thank you note in the jar, it reminded her she wasn't invisible. I listened, and I understood something clear as day. This wasn't about romance alone, it was about healing. At some point, her breathing slowed. She fell asleep against me, still holding my hand like she was afraid I might disappear if she let go. I stayed awake a little longer, staring out the window at the faint outline of the honor stand and the rows of plants we'd saved. And I made myself a promise. If Diane Keller and her friends wanted to fight, they weren't just fighting Rachel anymore, they were fighting me too. Because I wasn't leaving. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not after the way Rachel Evans had looked at me like I was the first safe place she'd found in years.